Welcome to LUSH Live Central 2018。咁歡迎大家嚟參加我哋嘅 LUSH Live Central 嘅 event 咧。我哋跟住落嚟咧就會有嘅討論環節咧，關於零廢生活嘅喺香港同埋都關於我哋 global 嘅 level 咧。咁我有個特別嘉賓咧嚟參加呢個 talk 咧，叫 Hannah Chung 嘅。咁佢有嘅 Instagram 咧，如果你哋有興趣可以睇下啦，係叫 Zero Waste Challenge 嘅。咁呢個 talk 咧就會用廣東話嘅。不過我哋如果有時間咧，就可以同你哋做 Q&A 嘅。特別如果你對佢有對呢個題目有興趣嘅話咧。So welcome back to LUSH Live Central 2018. In a moment, we're going to have a talk about zero waste in Hong Kong and in a global level. And in particular, we have a guest here that wants to talk about this subject. She's called Hannah Chung, and she's got a really interesting platform using Instagram called a Zero Waste Challenge. If you're interested, I can see everyone looking at their phones now, so probably looking at her Instagram and talking about her challenges in living a zero waste life. So everyone give Hannah Chung a round of applause.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. I think it's a great event so far. So.
Are you enjoying it?
Yes, loving it. It's really nice in PMQ, right in the middle of Central. So.
Lovely. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're talking about waste issue in Hong Kong, but firstly, let's talk about it in a global level. What is the plastic problem globally?
It is a huge problem that we need to speak more about. I mean, I'm not here to say plastic is the evil thing that we've created. Plastic has been very, very useful since its creation and mass production since the 1950s. That's when we started to make plastic on a global scale, on a much wider range. And then fast forward to today, it's actually replaced a lot of reusables. It's replaced a lot of things that we would normally just bring our own, like container. We see plastic pretty much everywhere. And I got to a stage where I thought, okay, it's gotten a bit too far. Okay. So if you think about it, since plastic was mass-produced in the 50s, 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic has been produced globally. And I mean, what does that even mean, 8.3 billion tons? It's about 80 million blue whales, it's 25,000 Empire State Buildings. That's how much plastic has been produced. And then of that, only 9% has been recycled.
9%?
Yes, yeah. Jesus. So this is a study done by the University of California back in 2016. And they tracked it that actually 79% of all the plastic ever produced either sits in landfill today or is polluting our natural environment. So 79% of that is like 6.5 billion metric tons of plastic that we actually don't know entirely where it is. So it could be polluting our oceans, and then once it gets into the oceans, there are a plethora of really different issues that could arise. So the problem with, if it ends up in a landfill, then it would take thousands of years to decompose and then contribute to carbon emissions. If it goes into the ocean, then it could break up into microplastics. So plastics doesn't actually break down. You think that, okay, so it goes into the ocean and it kind of disappears. But actually what happens is that it breaks up. And then what it turns into is they turn into microplastics. And this is really, you can't really see it in the human eye. It's everywhere. If wildlife or if fish eat this, then it goes up into the food chain as well, and then it becomes a health issue for us. So once you start saying it's a health issue, then that's when people start to really listen more, because a lot of people love to eat sushi, love to eat seafood, maybe they're vegetarian and they think, okay, but I can eat maybe fish sometimes, but then actually there could be a lot of chemicals that the plastics have absorbed, and then it goes up into the food chain, and then we absorb it in the end. So yeah, needless to say, it is a huge, huge problem that we now, like companies, the corporates, and then governments are really desperately trying to change this issue. So you see France that recently they're planning to ban single-use plastics.
Okay.
Taiwan they are introducing loads of, they're sort of phasing in the ban. So it's going to take them about 12 years to fully ban single-use plastics, cups, and then they say by 2030, after they phase it in slowly, they can initiate the full ban. So you get loads of governments who are trying to address the issue, but it is something that we need to educate the public more on, and how we as an individual can really make a difference as well.
Okay. When you say single-use plastics, forgive me for those, probably I'm quite naive, what does that actually mean, single-use plastic?
Single-use plastic is when you use it for that one time. So, for example, a plastic straw, which actually can't be recycled because it's too small to fit into the recycling processing plants. We use that for 13 seconds, and then we throw it away. So that's single use. We use only once. It's produced. So plastic is a byproduct of the oil industry, so it's so much cheaper to produce, which I understand. It's solved a lot of problems in terms of helping food last longer, and then it's in Hong Kong especially, it's far more convenient now with fast food, F&B places. But yes, because it's single use, a lot of it doesn't get recycled, and then when it doesn't get recycled, then that's when we have a huge problem with the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so as you just mentioned that the government is trying really hard to tackle the issue, and one of the ways to tackle, they say, is recycling. Is that actually the solution?
Recycling is a huge and complicated issue. So a lot of us, well, certainly in our generation, we grew up with the recycling symbol. You see something with a recycling symbol, you put it in the bin, and then that's it, end of story, but you don't actually know where it goes. So there are 6 main types of household plastics that we have, from the number 1, PETs, the LDPE, the shopping bags, and then the PP, which is like your takeaway containers. We've got 1 to 6, and if you look under your plastic bottles, you would see a number underneath it. And a lot of people still, I'm surprised a lot of people don't actually know that there are 6 different types of main plastics. And then we have number 7. Number 7 is actually labeled as others, and that's where things can get a lot more complicated. So with things like plant plastic, PLA plastic, that is labeled under number 7 as well, and actually cannot be recycled. It needs to be composted in a specific composting facility, like an industrial one, enable like for it to properly biodegrade. So yeah, it is very, very complicated. Your average Joe is not going to have all of this information. So actually with number 7, we label as others, there can actually be 40,000 different types of plastics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's 40,000 different types of plastics. So if you mix a little bit of PET with a bit of PP with different ratios, it becomes a new type of plastic. So if that is the case, then we have all these different types of materials that people do not know how to recycle at the end of it. So we put it in the bin. In Hong Kong especially, we have 3 bins. We've got plastic, metals, and paper. Plastics is just 1 bin, and we put it in, and then we have no idea, but it actually needs to be sorted in all these different types, so from 1 to 6. Otherwise, it will just go to landfill. But yeah, there's also the cost of it as well. So with our government here, they've decided that they've made it in the responsibility of, it's sort of they're opening it up for recycling companies to try to make a profit from this. But there is no way to make a profit from recycling because there is essentially no value in these materials. It's far cheaper to make virgin plastic than to recycle and then make, reuse the plastic. So for an example then, two aluminium cans, the rebate of that, if you see it's a problem in Hong Kong that you have the elderly men and women collecting the aluminium cans, collecting the cardboard. What is the cost of that? So 2 aluminium cans, the rebate is probably 50 Hong Kong cents. Okay. Which is, I mean, not great, but also actually, yeah, so there is
money for them.
It's value, right? Yeah. So going down to the plastics then, if you're just looking at the plastic bottle, the PET, a kilo of that is 50 cents. So they have to go and collect a whole lot more plastics. Wow. So actually, yeah, there is no value in doing that. It's far more effective to get the cardboard, the newspapers, and the aluminum cans than to take the plastics, because they also need to be cleaned. If they're contaminated, unfortunately, they will not be recycled either. So yeah, so if you say like, is recycling the solution? Well, it's a solution, but we think we need far more things, a lot more infrastructures put in place in order to take the recycling and to make sure that it's profitable.
Yeah.
So a lot of countries now, like Norway and Germany, and the UK will bring this system in, is the deposit return system. So if you buy a plastic bottle, a soft drink, or maybe a bottle of water, you'll be charged a deposit. Maybe it's like £1 or something like that, or 50p or something. And then if you return it and not contaminated, return it to the right place, you'll get that deposit back. And that's a far more greater initiative or incentive for people to then recycle properly.
And it's something that Habitu are doing at the moment. So they've got this, not plastic, I think they were telling me bamboo. If Jodie is around, bamboo cups as well that you could use for $20, and then if you didn't want to keep it, you can bring it back to them as well. So they're trying to be sustainable. So it's not just other countries. Hong Kong they are trying, but it seems to be small businesses that are paving the way.
For sure. I love what Habitu are doing. Yeah, for events, they have the Keep Cup, which is made from bamboo. And then can be reused. It's not single use, which is the main message here. Like, you can reuse things, I think companies that want to use PLA plant plastics, I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying that there is currently with PLA plant plastics, there isn't an industrial composter put in place in Hong Kong at the moment that can take these types of materials. So if they go to landfill, they still need a few thousand years to decompose.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it's a step into the right direction. I understand why companies want to do it. They're not cheap. They're like 2 to 3 times more expensive than your average packaging. But the small companies, I like that they are hoping to be more eco and being more aware, but you have to know that it's still quite linear, and we haven't quite turned it into a circular economy yet. But hopefully with businesses coming out, there will be more solutions to this problem.
Okay, so we've said that businesses are paving the way forward, but it seems that in Hong Kong, it's really hard to recycle, as you just mentioned. Why is that the issue? Why is that a problem?
Yeah, it's not enough education on the subject. So there are, like I said, there are 3 recycling bins. But then what can be recycled, what can't be recycled, it's not clear at all. So like a tissue paper, you think, okay, so that's paper, I'm going to put it in the paper recycling. But if it's contaminated, it won't be recycled. Same with plastics. If you have takeaway lunch boxes that's contaminated with oil, you put it in the whole recycling bin, and you could risk the entire bag of the plastics being sent to landfill because it's not cleaned properly and it could leak into the other types of plastics inside. So it's not enough education on the issue. We are getting more people who are aware, but if everyone isn't joining in, it doesn't really make sense. So yeah, I think from 10, 20 years ago, it was a big step to just put some bins out there so people don't litter. So I think we've gone that step, but it's the next step of teaching people about the different types of materials out there, what can be recycled, what can't, and it's a huge, messy, grey, confusing thing for most people. So if we're clear, then it will make a big difference. Even if it's a transparent bin, something as low-tech as that, if you can see what's inside the bin, I think it would educate people a bit more of what I should put in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's like a company that's doing that in Australia called Face Your Waste. And then you could see all the different types of materials inside there. So it just helps a bit more. But then in places like Japan, which, yes, they have a lot of packaging, but they also have a lot of infrastructures put in place to take their recycling. So we have 3 bins and a general waste bin. But in Japan, they actually separate their waste, and they're taught this from a very young age.
Yeah.
They're taught to separate it into 12 different categories. So yeah, they are miles away, like miles ahead of the rest of the world in terms of educating people. So that's where we really need to go in. We need to go into the schools, we need to go into corporations and teach people really how to separate their waste efficiently.
Yeah. So as you just mentioned, educating people from a very young age, it does sound like you're very open to this. And how did you get educated, might I ask?
So I started the Zero Waste Challenge about almost 2 years ago. Before that, I was just your everyday consumer. I mean, I guess I was quite eco, but I wasn't educated on the subject. I didn't study sustainability. But because I wanted to know more about it, I started the challenge, and then I wanted to follow the life cycle of your plastic bottle or the life cycle of most types of packaging. And through that, I've spoken to a lot of people. Hong Kong Recycles is a company in Hong Kong that takes recycling for businesses. They used to do it for consumers, but it's actually mainly for businesses now. And they've been able to educate a lot. And then talking to recycling companies in Hong Kong, which there aren't many, it's been a fruitful journey in terms of getting to know more of the issue. So yeah, I've just self-taught myself, like I've just
So you just
read
mentioned
a lot of articles.
Okay, so you just mentioned the Zero Waste Challenge, something that I'm very excited to hear about. Can you share your personal journey with that? Actually, what does that entail?
Yeah, so zero waste is actually a phrase coined by a French woman living in the States called Bea Johnson. So she sort of started off the zero waste movement. And what that basically means is that since I have been doing this challenge, I don't buy anything that I can't reuse or recycle or upcycle into something else. So I have to think about every purchase that I make. So they follow the 5 R's. So it's refuse. If you're given anything like marketing things, like you can refuse a pen, you can refuse all of those leaflets that they hand out on the street. You can refuse plastic bags. And then you reduce, which means you reduce everything that you have in your house. Do you actually need it? So it's going towards a more minimalistic lifestyle. And then you reuse. So reuse is, okay, so I'm given a plastic container from a restaurant. Can I reuse this again? So you try to make different or creative uses from it. So you do all these 3 before you even think about recycling. So the lifestyle isn't about recycling more, it's about recycling less because you are consuming less. And then the last one is rot, which is composting, which I found very, very difficult in Hong Kong to do. There aren't many farmers markets out there where you can go out and you can donate your food waste. The Hong Kong apartments are very small, so you can't really get a composter. There are solutions out there, but I think for the everyday person who wants to do good, it's a difficult thing. So for me, on the composting issue, my housing estate, it's part of 13 housing estates who've applied for a government funding to get their own composter in the residential buildings. So if you live in a residential building in Hong Kong, you can lobby and get the Housing Homeowners Association to lobby for this together and get a composter on site, so then everyone can collectively put their food waste in, which makes far more sense than doing it on your own.
And how did you get your neighbours to be on board with this? Because not everyone's that open-minded.
Actually, I've been very, very lucky because it was already one of the 13. But if you aren't, then you can always look into the Environmental Conservation Fund, and that they have a website in .org.hk, I think. And then you can research on how you can do it. Yeah, it does take a lot of work if you don't have it set up in your residential building already, but for sure, give it a go. Yeah, other than that, there are composting solutions. It's just my house is just a bit too small to do that here.
And what other things have you come across in your journey? I did look at your Instagram and saw that you made your own toothpaste. Why did you decide that, actually, I don't want to buy it anymore, I want to make it?
Yeah, so I'm not trying to promote a lifestyle where everyone should live in a forest and off the grid and making everything. But actually, toothpaste was very, very easy to make. It's simply coconut oil, baking soda, and then some essential oils like peppermint oil. The peppermint definitely helps convince you that it's toothpaste. It's slightly salty in taste because of the baking soda, but it works fine. Why I did it was because it's easy. It's easy for me. And it's non-packaged as well. But yeah, I'm not telling everyone you should make your own shampoo and deodorant and laundry powder. People don't have time for that in this day and age. It's just finding that balance on how we can do something positive, but then also make it work for us. Is what I'm trying to promote.
Okay. Have you come across any challenges so far in the past 2 years in doing this?
Yes, huge challenges. Mainly it's just remembering when I go to a restaurant. I still do dine in at a lot of restaurants. I know restaurants produce a lot of waste themselves on the back end. But before that, I was working 2 jobs, so I had a very busy lifestyle. So going into a restaurant and remembering to say, no straw, and no plastic container, and remembering that is very difficult. But I saw it as a challenge. It's a bit of a game for me. How can I spin this into something positive? So if I'm given a straw, I take it home, and then I try to do different things with it. I keep all of my waste basically, and I've kept it in a jar at home, so I can find more creative uses for it. But it can be done. I'm not saying it's easy to do. You just have to be persistent and know what can and can't be recycled, and then know where to shop as well.
Okay, so shopping, you did, when backstage we're talking a little bit about it, and then you did visit a shop, we won't name names, or you can if you want to, in Sai Pun as well. Could you share a little bit about what it is? Yeah.
So there are lots of old solutions out there for people. So you can go online, and there's a store called Plastic Free Hong Kong. They're based in Sai Kung, and they have a lot of reusables, a lot of lunch boxes, cafe cups. Loads of those available. Or there's also another store called Now No Waste. And then so it's Fanny Moritz, who is the CEO. She started this because she wanted to bring the whole concept of living a zero-waste lifestyle to Hong Kong. And yeah, there are a lot of alternatives on that site as well. But then for groceries and bulk buying, there's a new store called Live Zero, and they're in Sai Pun. And you can bulk buy nuts and seeds, superfoods. You can bulk buy a lot of things. Actually, I went there earlier. So I brought my own containers. There are little jars that people donate jars, so it's more of a community thing as well. So you go there and you weigh your container, you put the tear weight,
Okay.
you write it down, and then but this is coconut cream powder, so you put whatever you want inside, and then they minus this packaging weight as well. So everything is package free, and it's just makes the whole lifestyle a lot easier. So there are alternatives, there are options out there, and it's good that these small companies are starting up, because that's really when the movement starts. The more we talk about it, the more alternatives you bring people, the more people are going to demand from large corporations, and that's where it snowballs. For example, McDonald's has recently said that they're not going to automatically give you a plastic straw when you go and buy something. And actually, that's a huge impact. That can create a huge impact. If McDonald's, a large corporation like this, is going to do something as small as that, that's when we can get more impact.
Yeah. So as you were bringing your stuff out, I could see like tins and jars.
Oh, yeah.
Does that mean every time you do go shopping, you are taking those very heavy things with you?
No, this is just because I was in the area. But I don't usually... Well, I always have a shopping bag like this.
Yep.
It can be folded up really easy, really lightweight. But then normally what I have is just my regular reusables bag.
Okay.
It doesn't take up that much room. Or I have something like a collapsible lunchbox, which is made of silicone.
Oh wow, we've got a member of the audience. I've got a member of the audience. She's bought a collapsible cup recently, and she's been showing me. So it's quite like useful. It doesn't take up too much space in your bag, right? As well.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to walk around being a bag lady, but I just try to find things as lightweight as possible, and I try to gear towards stainless steel. Silicone is okay, but as long as it's lightweight and easy to carry and reusable, then I will do it.
So it does sound like your zero waste challenge has been not totally easy, but you've been able to do it. I was doing a bit of research in America, and as you mentioned, Bay Johnson, but also a person called Lauren Singer, who did a TED Talk, a TED Teen Talk, and she brought out a jar of the waste she had accumulated in the past 3 years, and it was a very inspiring talk, and they've made an impact in places like America. And so what are you aiming actually in doing the Zero Waste Challenge?
Yeah, so I saw loads of people who wanted to do this, but they were abroad. They were either in the US or Europe or Australia, and you think, okay, can it actually be done in Hong Kong, the most... it's a very convenient city, but also very, very wasteful at the same time. So that's why it's the Zero Waste Challenge. Can it actually be done? It's not about being perfect. I haven't been totally zero. It's because a lot of things can't be controlled, but the message isn't you have to be perfect, you have to strive to be zero. The message is actually what one thing can you do today? Can you bring a water flask with you? Okay, what's the next step? And then how do you ease into an eco-friendly lifestyle, but also make it work for you? Because it's zero waste, it's not zero life. Yeah,
absolutely. So as you just mentioned, it's about probably doing one thing to make an impact. What can we as regular people, and as you mentioned, you started out very regular, what can everyone do consciously to make an impact then?
So what I found, which is really positive, is engaging in a conversation and talking to people about this issue. So if there's anything that you can do, support the small businesses out there, the businesses that I said, so the zero waste stores, or even go to the wet markets and then bring your own bags, shop locally and talk to people about it, because when I first started this challenge, I really honestly did not know what to expect. But from that, talking to people, I have friends coming up to me every week saying, oh, I brought my own lunchbox to a restaurant today. Oh, I bring my own straw now. So then it's actually, it's talking to people and spreading the word. That's where the main impact comes from. So yeah, those are the two things. Buy locally, support small businesses, and then spread the word.
Thank you. Apart from, we've been talking about lots of packaging waste as well, and did notice that you do talk a little bit about food waste, or is there any other things that you are passionate about apart from just packaging waste in general?
I've taken a big thing from this. Well, like one of the main things I've taken from this is trying to lead a minimalistic lifestyle. So I try not to buy new clothes. I do buy new clothes, but I think very, very rarely do I do. The first point of contact is to buy second-hand clothes, and then I've done a lot of clothes swapping events with my friends. So it's actually just being more of a conscious consumer, and then every purchase that I make now, I ask myself simple questions. Do I need it? Is it going to last? You know, how durable is it? Is it going to make me happy? Before, with fast fashion, I think as an everyday consumer, you wouldn't ask yourself these questions. I think it's the price tag which mainly you would ask for.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's changed. I don't mind things that have a high price tag, but as long as they will last me several years and made sustainably, I know where it's made. So yeah, just being far more conscious about every purchase that you make.
I definitely will be now regarding fast fashion. So on a parting note maybe, and also we'll have some time for a Q&A, is there anything that you really want the audience, people on Facebook as well, is there anything that you really want them to take from your talk, or any tidbits, information that you think is very vital that they should know?
I guess from our conversation before with recycling, it's not the main answer. You can't just buy something and go, oh, it can be recycled, and then end of story. You have to think about how the government's treating all of these materials, where it actually ends up. Does it actually end up in landfill? And then once it does it leak into the ocean? We are all part of this system. So if we can do one thing, is just make sure that we're aware of that.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm just going to pass it to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Hannah that you want to know? Or if you're interested in zero waste lifestyle yourself, anything that you'd like to talk about? I saw your face moving. Does that mean you want? Yeah? Okay, cool. We'll pass the microphone.
I'm right at the front as well. I actually made some notes for my personal, sort of trying to learn some stuff for myself. You were saying about when you take straws and you reuse them. What I usually do, this is not a question, but I usually cut them up and put them into a jar, because I find that different straws are obviously different colors. And obviously, yeah, when you say you don't want a straw, sometimes it still comes out with one in the can. So that happens.
It's a great tip. Just
yeah,
it's decoration, so you decorate your house with it. Okay.
I mean, I've been trying to not doing as I'm trying to avoid filling it, but I mean, once it's full, it will look quite nice. So there's a positive to the negative. Going off what you were talking about food waste, I think on average, roughly it's around 1/3 of the world's food produce gets wasted. I know there are a lot of companies like Food Angel, and other organizations like Food Angel and stuff that help out with distributing food from companies and large stores. But what do you think that people can do themselves in terms of what would you recommend in terms of if we have food waste or things like that? Do you have any suggestions on that?
With food waste, I tend to, because I shop at the wet markets and I try to shop as package-free as possible, I buy what I need. So the first step is buying what you need. If you do end up with food waste, you don't have to follow the sell-by date really that much. And then also with vegetable scraps, I tend to keep them and I put them in my freezer. So if I'm making
like a stock or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I save all the vegetable scraps. I keep them in the freezer until I have enough, and then I make vegetable stock out of them. So there are unique ways that you can turn food waste into something else. You just have to think more about, or maybe just value more of the produce that you buy. So I tend to buy a lot of organic food. There's a really good online grocery or veg box that you can buy called Magic Seasons Organic, and they actually have a farm up in Chengyun in China. And then they've actually been really good because I've requested no plastic. They don't put anything in plastic, and they deliver everything to me in a box. And because I know it's organic, it's a family-run business, they take a lot of care into growing these vegetables, then I don't waste any of it. I make sure I use every part of it. So it's actually being more of a conscious consumer and saying, okay, I've spent money, it's not free, you know, I've spent my hard-earned money on something, can I make it last? Definitely going to try not to waste it. And that's the thing with a lot of supermarkets out there. They do like 3 for 2 sort of deals, and we tend to buy more than we actually need. Yeah. So it's just being like, I'm a single person household, so I don't tend to buy a lot, but I know families do. But actually, there are things that companies can do. Like, imagine if we re-envisioned the fridge. The fridge now, I think we waste maybe 30% from our weekly shopping, I think, overseas, in the UK or in the US. You buy loads from the supermarket, and then a third of it maybe goes bad. So salad leaves goes horrible. We waste so much of it. So if the fridge was redesigned and we can look down and peer at all of the different types of produce that we have, then they will make a huge difference already. So if there's any companies out there who would like to redesign their fridge, I think is a big step.
I think especially in terms of how you organize the fridge as well, to make sure that all of the old produce is at the front so that you can, you eat that first. Because I find a lot of people will buy something, stick it in the fridge, buy something else, stick that in the fridge, and then the stuff at the back gets neglected, and then it just gets, wasted.
Yeah, for sure.
You were talking about composting in Hong Kong and how it's quite difficult. So for me, I live in Cheung Wan. It's just like a concrete jungle. There are not many parks around or any places where you can really sort of grow things. But what I've been doing recently is using bokashi compost bins, and it's quite secure, so nothing gets inside. And the one downside is that you have to use there's some sort of flake, some kind of something that breaks it down. Yeah, but it comes in a plastic bag, which is sort of there's a downside to it, but. One thing I've been doing is if I have a bag and I think, I could reuse that, I just sort of cut along the top, and then you can add some sort of Velcro or something to it, and you can reuse it as something else, maybe to put potatoes in or something. But I don't know, do you have any suggestions on what I could do with this compost? Because It's pretty much broken down now, and I have no idea where to take it.
So actually there are different types of composting solutions of people who are interested in composting their food waste. There is the old school outdoor tumbler. So if you have a back garden, you can put everything in a tumbler and then wait 2 to 3 months, make sure that you have enough carbon and nitrogen balance so it doesn't smell. But then technically in 2 to 3 months you can make your own compost. But obviously most people in Hong Kong do not have the space or the luxury of having a garden. There is the bokashi method, which I've heard of, which essentially it just ferments your food waste. You put this in and it kind of it turns everything sour and it kind of pickles and ferments it. But then you have to take this and then you have to bury it in some soil in order to actually compost it. So I actually don't know where you could put that, but there are many parks, I guess. I don't recommend going to a park and digging up a hole and burying your food waste. But that's the thing with bokashi. Even though it ferments it, you do need that other solution. You can go very fancy and go for a home appliance food composter. So there's two types. There's the Oaklin one, the Oaklin, Oklin brand, and it just works like your everyday household appliance. And you put everything in 24 hours, it kind of replicates the normal composting method, and then it turns it into compost that's ready to go if you have a garden or somewhere to put your compost. But yeah, those are very expensive options. But yeah, I think as an individual, if you live in a residential building, I would say, again, lobby for your building to get one for the entire building, so it's economically, it makes more sense that way.
Okay, cool. All right, and who wants the microphone?
Do you have access to allotments at all? There's allotment areas
in like the Shamshui-Po district. No,
okay.
thanks.
Because I have a few friends who
I think so.
go to allotments and grow things, and so that might be something for you.
I recently joined like a Hong Kong composting sort of page. There are only about 100 people on there, and it doesn't seem to be very active, so I'm sort of stuck. But it's fine, because the more I'm waiting, the more it just breaks down. So it's actually, instead of sort of being like fermented, sort of pickled vegetables, it's now actually just turned into soil.
Oh, wow.
Because I've left it
Great
for
to
about
hear.
3 months, as opposed to, well, it's meant to be 2 weeks. So you can tell, like, I've been waiting a long time to ask someone questions, because I've been putting it on the Facebook page, and doesn't seem to be getting it.
Not very
seem to be getting any
proactive.
responses. Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah,
And
so I mean, I think not many people would wait 2 to 3 months to let their food waste turn into compost. I think it's real dedication there to make sure that your food waste gets to the right place. But then at the same time, we need more larger scale solutions out there. So that's also a trickier option.
I did see somewhere where people just basically just bury their waste straight away, and it just sort of breaks down under the ground. But the problem with that is, living in residential areas, Hong Kong's quite, compact. It's very hot and humid, especially in the summer. Animals like cockroaches and rats, are very sort of prominent in certain areas.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are very hesitant to compost in the central parts of Hong Kong because of that. But I'm sure I'll drop you a message on Facebook if I find any more information.
Yes,
Yeah.
Another thing is, if you find another solution, anything to do with zero waste, please message me. Please let me know. I'd love to know more, because we want to keep that conversation going. So let me know, and then I would love to repost and share what you found as well, because I'm only doing this so I can spread the word. So yeah, please let me know if you have any other solutions out there.
And would you try and encourage, it does sound like this gentleman here, you are trying to live a zero waste lifestyle as well. Do you encourage us to really proactively engage in this?
Yes, yeah, definitely engage. I think it's a very, very small percentage of people who would want to actively lead this lifestyle, but then if you are interested, spread the word, tell all your friends about it, and then tell them that if out of all of my friends they take one thing from it, that's when the movement starts to happen.
Okay. Am I allowed to do some sort of shameless plugging for a Facebook event coming up in 2 months' time that's related to plastic?
Plug away.
Okay, if you go onto Facebook and type in Plastic Attack Hong Kong, in about 2 months' time, on July the 15th, I'm going to be organising a protest in several welcome stores across Hong Kong, where you leave the plastic waste. It's happened in other places around the UK and the US and all over Europe. And just type in Plastic Attack Hong Kong, you'll see the event, and you'll see all the information there. So I will stop talking now.
And what's your aim with this event?
I mean, the thing is, there are articles from 2-3 years ago from places like the SCMP, Hong Kong Free Press, trying to hold, stores like, I shouldn't really, name drop. Am I allowed to name drop?
Probably not.
Okay. Stores like who are constantly being held accountable for all of the waste that they're producing, but just giving really generic answers like, oh, it's because of hygiene. But then you think to yourself, does a pineapple that already has its own natural protection need to be wrapped into polystyrene and plastic? I think it's just too much.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more about just taking it to their doorstep, really. but the thing is, I'm not sure how it's going to work out in Hong Kong because obviously it's the culture here is very different to the UK and the US and Europe. But I think it's still worth trying because I think that's better than doing nothing. So yeah.
So we can find you on Facebook.
Yep.
For
Plastic
this.
Attack Hong Kong.
Yeah.
For sure, there are loads of there's a big movement across the world called Trash the Checkout, where you sort of...
what, sorry?
Trash the Checkout.
Okay.
Where you buy things from the supermarket and then you leave every item of plastic there at the checkout, just to send a message. So it's just be an activist. If that's where you think the companies will listen, then yeah, that's great. But actually, with the psychology of change, I think what I'm trying to do is really more look to the positives. So then, you want to congratulate the companies that are making these small changes, and then that's when they, rather than feeling threatened, like, oh, you're trying to attack, maybe try to do it in a more, okay, let's what are the alternatives? Can you make a positive change? But yeah, I also, if you are your own activist, please go ahead, trash the checkout. That's when, if you want the companies to listen, right?
You're making a noise, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions for Hannah? Does anyone else? Okay. Well, is there any one last parting words that you have for everyone?
No, but thank you for having me. I think actually another thing is with LUSH, I'm a big fan of LUSH even before you guys reached out to me because it's one of the very few companies that actually have thought of a circular economy. So you take back your plastic bottles and plastic tubs. I mean, with Hong Kong, it's a separate issue, but you do that in the UK and Japan. And then you also have package-free shampoo and shower gel, which actually makes a big difference if you think about it. So I do encourage companies like you to think about making it circular. Don't think about linear anymore. How can you take back? If you produce something, you have the responsibility to take it back and then recycle it properly. So I do encourage companies like yours to do more. So
thank you very much. Yeah, we are trying hard. As you mentioned, Hong Kong recycling is quite hard, and you work with Hong Kong Recycling Natural Group, and they are very willing to take away our black pots as well, but it's hard for them to recycle it for us as well. So we do need to be proactive, make some noise and tell people about this, because if not, we're going to go backwards rather than forwards. Yeah. So. Thank you so much, Hannah. It was a pleasure having you, absolute pleasure. So thank you so much also to the audience for attending and watching this talk. You can just give Hannah a round of applause. And thank you so much for listening to our talks the past 2 days at LUSH Live Central 2018 at PMQ. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And please feel free to look at the workshops, take part in the many talks that our 13 charity groups have here as well, and eat lots of lovely food and drink as well. Thank you very much, everyone.